This is Duke University.
I also study ethnic diversity in the African-descended population of the U.S. Tori was kind enough to mention basically what it's about. That's about immigrants and transmigrants from Africa and the Caribbean, as well as Louisiana Creoles of color. Anybody from Louisiana? Oh. Gullah Geechees. Anybody from the Low Country? Native Americans of partly African ancestry. And so I began that work because, you know, I grew up with a very diverse set of black people. My neighborhood, my middle-class neighborhood in Washington had African ambassadors, Caribbean ambassadors, black people from all over the U.S. South, from Canada. There were people, the people living next to us ate lamb chops and salad. Where they learned to do that, I didn't know. And it was such a special experience for me to taste that strong flavor of lamb when I'd have to stay over their house when my mother hadn't come home from work yet. And on the other side of us lived a light-skinned family that had come from Virginia, from one of those sets of families that always married other light-skinned people and often married their cousins in order to keep the light skin in the family. Because, you know, being black in this society for centuries has been hell. And if you could figure out a little way to escape it, most people tried. So they were next door to us. I mean, often these populations would, you know, they were very loyal to black institutions like Howard University and to black neighborhoods because they weren't allowed to live anyplace else. Sometimes they could pass and they would try to pretend to be somebody else, but like things like this would happen. One member of this very family was scrubbing floors in an apartment building, and the manager came along and said, "What are you doing down there scrubbing the floor? That's undignified for a white man." So they said, "Here, you can operate the elevator." And then he started operating the elevator, and then the manager found out that he was actually a Negro and then fired him. Seriously. So in any case, this study was set in the context of Howard University because my parents went to school there and my father taught there and I knew it. I grew up there. I learned to swim there. I learned about Santeria there from Doctora Portuondo. And so I was curious about the diversity of black populations. I was also aware of an emerging literature that suggested that Caribbean immigrants felt superior to African Americans, to put it concretely. And I had had all sorts of Caribbean friends. I dated a Caribbean one before I actually found the love of my life while I was at Harvard and as an undergraduate. And I just called her up, you know, as I was reading this literature. I said, "Hope, did you ever feel particularly different from me culturally?" And I just thought the answer was obviously no, because living in New York City, she always knew the latest, hottest African-American music before I did, the latest, hottest dances, the latest, hottest sartorial fashions. She introduced me to Prince, an artist formerly known as the artist formerly known as Prince. And so I asked her this question, with the implication that the answer was obviously no. And you know what she said? Completely different from you. And I thought we were almost the same person. Her father was a doctor, my father was a doctor. Her mother was a nurse, my mother was a psychologist. Her parents had never married, my parents were divorced. She was ambivalent about her father, I was ambivalent about my father. I thought, you know, this is just a New York version of black people. But nope. So I figured at Howard University, where the most ambitious black people from all over the country and all over the world are sending people, and these are all, you know, sophisticated, educationally oriented, middle-class people, this effect will be, I've forgotten what the statistics say, but statisticians say, but it would be nullified or it would be erased. Who knows the word for that? It would correct for class differences because, for example, African immigration to the United States is disproportionately very high class. It is the second wealthiest and highest educated continent of origin group in the United States. Are you with me? Caribbean immigration also disproportionately favors professional people. So, you know, if we're at Howard University where, you know, everybody's alike in class and aspiration and educational orientation, we wouldn't see this effect of, oh, we're better than you African Americans. Because, you know, I just believed, I knew racial classificatory systems were different all over the world, But the one-drop rule that prevails in the US was a very effective fiction in the service of the civil rights movement. Have I gone too fast? There's something called the one-drop rule in the United States. That is to say, if you have one African ancestor, or it is conceivable that you had one African ancestor, you're black, period. In Cuba, nobody thinks that way. A mulatto is as different from a black person as he or she is from a white person. And when President Obama was winning the election, my Brazilian friends said to me, I hear a black man is running for president. And then they'd see a picture of President Obama, and they'd say, "É negro? Is he black?" So that's the one-drop rule. I thought every population that came to the United States, that came from places in the Caribbean where everybody considered himself a little higher than somebody else because they were a little lighter skinned, or people in Nigeria who never even thought of themselves as black, because everybody's black there, or people in Brazil where they have this like hundreds of different little micro categories of combination of hair texture, skin color, nose shape, whether you have freckles. I mean, they just have hundreds of little different differentiations. But if they're showing respect for you, they bump you up the spectrum from African to European. But if they feel love for you, they bump you way down. Like lovers call each other my black. Like really like pale white people. Like white as the driven snow. You say, oh meu neguinho. So the lover will say to her husband, oh, my little black. And the husband will say back, oh, minha pretinha. Oh, my little black woman. So it's all messy there. Everything's neat here. I thought when people got here, it would become neat for them too. We'd all join the same army. Nope. What I discovered at Howard was a phenomenon that I named ethnological schadenfreude. The tendency of marginalized populations, especially ones that can imagine themselves not being at the bottom of the hierarchy, saying to the people at the top, no, don't oppress me. Don't discriminate against me. I'm not the one who deserves to be discriminated against. It's them. And that's the psychological dynamic and sometimes material strategy that I see in many ethnic identities. I think normatively, ethnic identities are an effort to escape last place, to say, no, we're not simply inferior versions of you all. We're a distinctive thing, but we're better than those people. And we're in many ways like you.